Buried deep in the lineage of David, there is a man marked for life by his name. A man who thousands of years later would rise from obscurity because of a humble, heartfelt prayer. Experience God's blessing for your life. The Prayer of Jabez.
Thank you very much. Well, it's hard to believe we're already in the last part of the Prayer of Jabez. This is a series of 4 parts dealing with what Jabez prayed thousands of years ago that many millions of people, perhaps like you, have started to pray in your own life. And this takes it a step deeper. So many times people have come up to me and said, "Oh, I loved reading that book, and I've even gone through your devotional, but I wish you'd teach me so much more. How do you live the Jabez life on a daily basis?" And I hope that this series is that answer for you. It's a step deeper. Things we've never talked about in the book or the devotional or other things we've written about how do you actually do this. And if you remember, the prayer of Jabez has 4 parts to it. He says, "Oh, that you would bless me indeed, and that you would enlarge my territory, that you'd put your hand upon me and keep me from evil." We're on the keep me from evil part of it. And if you'll notice, it follows a logical progression. First of all, that you'd bless me, and as the blessings come, that you'd give me more ministry. And as the ministry goes beyond the safety net, the safety zone, the comfort zone, would you please put your hand upon me? And then surprisingly, he says something, keep me from evil. And if you don't think about it, it can go right past you. But go back to the territory right here that we've been talking about. This is enlarge my territory, and as the territory enlarges, it goes into part in which somebody else owned. It wasn't your territory, and perhaps it wasn't even God's territory. In a sense, it was the enemy's territory. And as you move into this territory, you're going to experience some opposition, not just from people perhaps, but from demonic powers. Satan himself will come against people who really try to live the Jabez life. Because as the light goes, it goes into the darkness. And I want to equip you in these 2 sessions about what to expect and what to do and what it will be like and how to fight against it. But I want to go back to my freshman year in graduate school when I was at seminary in my first semester with Dr. Howard Hendricks. It was after a class, and there were 4 of us, 4 men in a row right in front of his desk to ask him questions. And the first guy said, "You know, Dr. Hendricks, when I first came into this seminary, my life was full of tests and difficulties and ins and outs and struggles. But now, after studying Greek and Hebrew and theology and church history, my life is so smooth, it's like a plate of glass." And I remember hearing that, thinking to myself, I'd give my right arm for my life to be like this. And Dr. Hendricks didn't even say anything to this young man. He just stood up. He looked at him and said, "Young man, that's the worst thing you could have possibly said to me. Because when you came, you were at least in the battle. But now it shows me that the enemy doesn't even think you're worth fussing over. Your life is not supposed to be like that. You are in a battle." And I remember saying to myself, I'm so glad I didn't say that. This issue of keep me from evil. Let's take a look at it in your workbook as we get into the opening part. What does it mean to keep me from evil? Evil, in this passage, means bad or wicked. Bad or wicked. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 5, the same Hebrew word is used. Let me read it for you. "Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." And you know, as a result of that statement, in reality, God sent the flood, and the whole world was destroyed. That's the evil or the wickedness. The same word is used about the Garden of Eden, about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's the same Hebrew word. Most places in the Bible it means bad or wicked or sinful. But that same Hebrew word can also mean issues of pain, not just wickedness. And that's why in some of the translations in your Bible, it may be, keep me from pain, because the same Hebrew word can mean either one depending upon the context. I believe, along with the New King James and other places, other translations, this is the best translation. Keep me from evil. Because most of the times that word is used in the Old Testament, it speaks of evil. And I believe that's what he's asking for, that God keep me from evil. If you remember, each part of this prayer is the exact opposite the way we normally think or we normally pray. I didn't used to ask God to bless me. I didn't used to ask God to give me more ministry. I certainly didn't ask God to put his hand upon me, and I never asked God to keep me from evil. In fact, it was a brand new thought. That is, when temptation came, I may pray and say, God, please help me not to sin. But the thought of saying, Lord, I don't know where evil is. I don't know where it is till I'm there. Will you please direct my feet away from evil? Just keep me away from it. Because if you're not there, you're not going to sin. Just keep me away. Keep my eyes away from it. Keep my thoughts away from it. Keep my feet away from it. So he's asking God to just steer me away from evil. Because as you continue to grow in this whole issue of the Jabez life, you're going to find that temptations don't go away. They still hang around. And now you have some extra ones you probably didn't have before, because the enemy takes notice. Whoa, watch out for her. Watch out for him. Look what they're doing in our territory. They're bringing in the light. Then secondly, what does it mean? Keep me. Keep me asks that God would act to protect. To protect. And what Jabez is saying, would you please act, God, and keep me? Would you protect me? Would you steer me around the evil? And the last part of that prayer is that it may not cause pain. Or perhaps you can translate it that it might not pain me or grieve me. Why the two different translations in different Bibles? The answer is because the Hebrew that's there is not clear. It could be either I cause pain, or it could be that I experience pain or grief. And again, I favor the New King James translation, that I don't cause pain to someone else. It could also include bringing pain to yourself. Because when you sin, I mean in a significant way, there's going to be pain that comes, either just to you or to other people that are around you who get hurt by that same issue. And what Jabez was really saying is, Lord, I don't want to live up to my name. I don't want to be pain. I don't want to experience that pain, and I don't want to cause other people that pain. Well, that last part of the verse, that I might not cause pain, that same word is used in Genesis chapter 6, and it says, and the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. He was brokenhearted. And Jabez is saying, Lord, don't let me experience the brokenheartedness that comes from causing pain to others and to myself. Let's take a look at 5 distinctives about this. Number 1, keep me from evil is not only from suffering, but from sin. But from sin. Number 2, keep me from evil is not only from sin, but keep me from Satan. That would also be included in that prayer. Number 3, keep me from evil is not only for the future, but for the present. Not only keep me in the future from evil and wickedness, but right now keep it from me. Number 4, keep me from evil is not accomplished by you, but God. But God. Remember, every single one of the 4 parts of the prayer of Jabez, he's asking God to do a verb. He's asking God to act. Would you bless me? Would you, God, enlarge my territory? Would you, God, put your hand upon me? Would you, God, keep me from evil? So he's actually asking God, would you intervene and steer me away from evil? It's God doing something for you. And last, keep me from evil not only keeps you from pain, but keeps pain from others. Keep me from evil keeps you, as well as others, from pain. Let's see if we can't get into some pitfalls about this whole issue. Misconception number 1, God knows my temptation, so praying isn't necessary. I hear this all the time. God knows the evil that's there. God knows the temptation. Why should I ask him to protect me from it? That's a great question. Therefore, many people never even pray this way. I didn't used to. And yet when the Lord was asked by his disciples, teach us how to pray, he didn't say very many things in that prayer, did he? This short prayer. One of those things is, and lead us not into temptation. Jesus says, if you're going to pray, men, this is how you pray. Lead us not into temptation. There's a great passage in Matthew 26. It's in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he came to his disciples and found them asleep and said to Peter, what, could you not watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray, watch this now, lest you enter into temptation. Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. Therefore, the point is, the prayer to keep me from evil greatly affects whether you enter temptation. Enter temptation. It's not when you're in temptation to be strong, but would you please, Lord, protect me from temptation? That's a very different way of thinking, isn't it? It's unusual. Point number 2, misconception number 2. I don't have to watch out for temptation. I've already prayed. I've already prayed. You know, Lord, I prayed this morning to keep me away from temptation, so I am fine all day long. I'm not even going to sin today. Well, the truth of it is, the prayer to keep me from evil doesn't guarantee that you won't sin. And the first passage that comes to mind is 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And misconception number 3. God protects me especially when I'm in ministry. Especially when I'm in ministry. That is, people think this way. Since God is using me in ministry, and I'm serving Him, then God is automatically going to put a, I don't know what you think, maybe a row of warrior angels around me, and that because I'm serving you, He's going to keep all evil away from me, and therefore I don't really need to worry about it. The truth of it is exactly the opposite. The prayer to keep me from evil is critically important when you are ministering. When you are ministering. Oftentimes, the greatest evil comes to a person, the greatest temptation comes to a person who's living the Jabez life like we're talking about in 2 different places. Right before a significant time of ministry, right before it, or right after it, when you're really exhausted. Those are the 2 times you need to be very, very careful. Never again think because I'm serving God with all my heart that God will keep you from sin or temptation. He doesn't. He doesn't say, I'll keep you from all temptation. So therefore you must understand that you're still going to have temptation. You're still going to be tempted to sin. But how many times you pray, and I would pray, God, keep me from temptation, we have no knowledge of how often God is going to steer us around this issue. Unlike the first 3 parts of this prayer, I don't know when He answers this one. I know when He blesses me. I know when He expands the border. I know when He puts His hand upon me. But to be straightforward, I don't know when He answers this part because I don't know what was there. When I'm living my life and I'm praying, God, keep me from evil, I don't know when He does this for me. This is a part I must believe in my heart. The same way when Jesus said, pray this way, lead us not into temptation. You don't know when He answers this one. This is the part you must believe in your heart that it actually takes place. Well, let's move over to the next part of this whole section, some principles about keep me from evil. Principle number 1, God can keep you during 3 types of temptations. 3 types of temptations. I want to take this a little deeper for you. Where do these temptations come from? And how do you think about them? Number 1, pray keep me from evil during the temptation of the flesh. The flesh is you, your own desire to sin. Galatians chapter 5, verse 19 says, now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, etc. This is acts of the flesh. I want to really get down to this. No matter how long you walk with God, your flesh is still with you. Your flesh does not improve. It doesn't. If a person is acting more and more like Christ, it's not because their flesh got better. Galatians says it's impossible. It doesn't. It's always opposed to the Spirit. It's contrary to the Spirit. It's against the Spirit. The flesh never gets better. Well, if your flesh never gets better, then how can a person become more and more like Christ? The answer is the Holy Spirit who's in them. That person lives by the Spirit more and more and more and more. Therefore, most of the time they're living by the Spirit, and the flesh doesn't have any power. But you know what? In an instant, a person can break with the Spirit, live by the flesh, and you could say to yourself, where did that come from? It came from your flesh. And your flesh never gets any better. Therefore, the people who think to themselves, if I can just get away from the world and live by myself in this little building by myself, I will never sin again. Trouble, just look inside. You're still here. And you can have lustful thoughts in your head. You can have anger in your head with nobody else around. Please don't ever think your flesh is getting better. I used to think this way without knowing it. Darlene and I have been happily married for 32 years. We just celebrated our anniversary 2 nights ago. It's funny. I called up to order some flowers for her, and the lady on the phone said, so what's the occasion? I said, it's my anniversary. Really? How long have you been married? 32 years. No, you haven't. Nobody's married that long anymore these days. I said, oh yeah, it's really true, and I love her more today. No kidding. Do you have a brother? And I guess about 15 years ago, we were on the way to a retreat, she and I together, and we hardly ever fight. We just don't. And we had a pretty good fight on the way to this retreat, and it got real quiet in the car, because both of us were unused to that. And I said to her, I said, this is so disappointing. And she says, what do you mean? I said, I'm just as rotten as I was 20 years ago. And the realization, you don't get better. Your flesh is just as filled with the flesh as ever. Don't try to improve the flesh. Try to walk by the Spirit, and you will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. So your flesh is still there. How do you know which you're walking in, the flesh or the Spirit? Just watch your behavior. If you're full of anger, you're in the flesh. If you have grace and mercy, you're full of the Spirit. Just pay attention. Point number 2. Second type of temptation. Pray, keep me from evil due to the temptations of the world. Of the world. This isn't you. This is outside of you. And the most classic passage is in 1 John 2. Look at it in your workbook. Do not love the world. Which means you can. Or the things of the world. For if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. Well, what is that talking about? Well, this is me. If I go into a closet and shut the door, the world isn't there tempting me. I can have my own temptations in my own flesh, but the world is outside of me. And the world has a system. The system is run, according to Ephesians, by Satan himself, who infiltrates schools and the media and business. And Satan has an agenda, and the agenda is to tempt you to sin by wanting something you shouldn't, by doing something you shouldn't. That's why the New Testament says, don't be poured into the world system. Don't allow that to happen. Well, it's pretty tough to do that, isn't it? Because on television all the time, what's an advertisement trying to do? To make you be discontent and to covet something. What's the world system trying to do? To walk over people so you can get ahead. The world system tempts all of us. And God says, don't love the things of the world. Well, why not? Well, they're not from me, first of all. And secondly, because your real world is on the other side in heaven, when you're going to see some things that I made for you that will make this world seem like nothing. Don't get hung up here. Instead, go here. And you could see the New Testament talking about some individuals who loved the world and they didn't serve God because of it. And certain ones of my friends who used to be in the ministry in one way or another got pulled away into one part of the world, and before long, they're not in anymore. You can't have the love of God and the love of the world coexisting. One of the two of them will take leadership. That's the second temptation. The third temptation is the most challenging. It's pray to keep from evil due to the temptation of the devil. The devil is Satan. Ephesians chapter 6 says this, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day. And having done all, to stand." What is this? Many people have difficulties with this part of life. Many people don't really believe that Satan is a real person. Even many Christians don't. They think there's just a kind of an atmosphere of evil. Satan was the strongest and most brilliant of all angels. The greatest creation God ever did was of Lucifer, or now Satan. And he is brilliant beyond our comprehension. He's the one who rebelled against God, and he lost. And now he hates God, and he hates everything to do with God, and he wants to hurt God. And the way he hurts God is to hurt you if you serve him. And he hates you coming into his territory where darkness exists and bringing the gospel so that people can get saved and get out of the darkness, or people who are in bondage to sin and are so much under the bondage that they can't even serve God and barely believe God's real, to come over and bring great freedom and break free from that. Satan is opposed to that. And I want to just speak a little bit more openly about this. Most Christians live in the comfort zone. And when you do, you're not really much of a bother to the enemy. You just aren't. When you begin to move in this direction, and when you understand, don't run away from fear, anticipate it. Expect the border bullies, go ahead and go right on through them by faith that God is with you. And when you learn that the hand of God can come upon you, then you have this whole issue of the supernatural taking place. Now, I want you to really follow me here. Not many of us are going to go this far. Not many of us are going to learn how to release the hand of God through us. So for most of us who are watching this, you're not going to have this in your life. But there are a few of you that are going to become so committed to Christ that you're going to learn the deeper secrets of how God works through men and women just like you and me. And you're going to find yourself on the front edge of the firing line, on the front edge. And when you do, you're going to find out things about the enemy you didn't believe could be possible. He is ruthless. He is fierce. And he seeks to hurt you and your loved ones and your family and your physical life and your finances and your mind, and he will oppress you and he will come against you. That is the truth. And any man or woman who's been on the front lines knows what I'm speaking about. And I just want you to understand that he's not underneath every single rock. He's not behind every bad thing that happens to you. But the enemy is real. And he will come against you and cause you to be oppressed. Oppressed and depressed are very different. Depression is a normal human reaction to a loss of something or physical exhaustion, sadness. Oppression is a dark cloud that the enemy puts on you and makes you feel like you're worthless and you can't do it and everything is going to fail. And he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing against you until you cave in and go back in failure. That's the enemy. It's a gloom on top of you. And I want you to understand that that's to be expected. That's to be expected. It's not to be expected that you allow him to keep doing that to you. However, you must learn that the point isn't to attack Satan. The Bible's very clear. Don't attack Satan. Don't become aggressive with Satan. The Bible says what we're supposed to do is to stand. Stand your ground. That's how you defeat the enemy. The Bible says this: resist Satan, not attack him. Resist him, and he will flee from you. The point is to stand, not to run into it. Stand until he leaves, then move forward.